I know it's recommended we get 150 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity per week. Is there a guideline specifically for how much therapy movement retraining? Early on, I enjoyed spending a few hours a day, but that's not realistic anymore. Life is busy. Absolutely, such a good question. I've done videos on this where I've really talked in depth on the timeline, and I think that is super, super important. So I always talk about the first 2 years, as much time as possible you want to devote to movement retraining. Remember, that brain is trying to build new neural networks, and after trauma is when the brain metabolically is the most ripe for that rewiring process. So definitely 3 hours is what you get in rehab. If you went to rehab, I say you continue that for those first 2 years. So I want to be very clear about that. And then the next phase, from 2 years, I would say, to 5 years-ish, I would say it's kind of 50-50. Everyone, based on their lifestyle, is going to have a different plan at this point. In my mind, I would say if you can continue to devote 3 hours a day, I would continue to devote that time to a combination of movement retraining and some sort of an endurance activity. My opinions on this have probably changed a little bit over the years. Early on, probably 10 years ago, I was all about like movement retraining. If you can't do it perfectly, don't do it at all. I would say once you get out of that 2-year window, we have to allow some room for some cardiovascular exercise, even if your movement quality isn't perfect. Now, once you get into this phase, because so many people start to get burnt out, I would say if you start to notice that you're getting burnt out, even if you have the time to do it, I would cut back on that 3 hours. I've seen people completely fall off the wagon and even almost kind of become resentful of their rehab. So I would say, like, if that is you, I would scale way back 2 years. I would say mind over matter it as much as possible and try and get that rehab in. But after that, if you're really starting to just hate rehab, I would stop. Now, I've read some research recently that has changed my opinion on giving people reps. So I've spent a lot of time giving people reps and sets, 40 is usually my number, 20 to 40. But there's some no, it's not recent, it's new to me that I'm just rereading about how long a human can actually focus. As far as most of the data shows now, if you're trying to learn something, and I think it's called the Pomodoro technique, is very popular right now, but it's where people study in college. They study in 25-minute segments, and then they do something else not related for 5 minutes, then they come back to it. Well, that is actually based on scientific data that the human brain can really only focus for about 20 to 25 minutes at a time. So when it comes to the movement retraining, and this is just the last couple of weeks that I'm trying to kind of flesh this out in my head and how I apply this or how I build this into a home exercise program. But if that is the case, and based on this data, if the human brain really can only focus on something for 20 to 25 minutes, I'm starting to think that you should probably not spend more than 20 to 25 minutes at any given time working on movement retraining. And it's always worth reiterating that, remember, movement retraining is not strengthening. We are trying to build a new neural network. And so we really want to be focused. Just like if you were trying to learn a second language, you would want to be extremely focused and paying attention to that movement, trying to feel it, almost reflecting on how did that feel in therapy, try and recreate that, do that on the other side a couple of times, then go back to the involved side. Those are all tools that are good for the learning process. And then in addition to that, probably limit movement retraining to 20 to 25 minutes. And if that is the case, that Pomodoro technique, they do it several times. So they'll do it in 4-hour spurts. They'll do 25 minutes, 5 minutes of something unrelated, 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off. So I would say at minimum, if you can, I would do 2 sessions of movement retraining a day. I'm still conflicted on whether or not you want to do cardiovascular training or you're your fitness training that I talk about a lot, before or after that training, there is some data that says that you want to do that immediately following that movement retraining. So as of today, that is my opinion, is that you want to do that movement retraining first, 20 to 25 minutes, and then ideally, based on what I've read recently, follow that up with some kind of an endurance activity. So that is how I would structure it. The endurance activity, remember, we're shooting for that 150 to 300 minutes per week, broken up however you want to. That is going to help with neuroplasticity. Cardiovascular activity is something that gets your heart rate up, but you could still maintain a conversation. You don't really have to monitor anything unless you have a cardiac risk and your doctor wants you to monitor it. But to keep equipment to a minimum, get your heart rate up, but still be able to maintain a conversation. Now, there's one other thing that I've talked about in previous videos that I think is worth repeating, is that some of that evidence that I talked about in the sleep video that I did, they are finding that you consolidate memories at night while you're sleeping. So in an ideal world, I would say do it at the end of the day, right before you go to sleep, especially if you're someone that can get good quality sleep. And then I would repeat the movement retraining again first thing in the morning. So first thing in the morning and in the evening, sticking to 25 minutes in incorporating some kind of an endurance activity following that movement retraining. Now, if you're someone that if you get your heart rate up, you have trouble sleeping, that's going to be individualized per person. Not everyone is that way. Some people can work out and it actually helps them to go to sleep at night. So that just depends on the person. But that is an excellent question. And hopefully my answer just kind of shows you all the nuance that's involved. If you liked that video, check out these two videos down here. If you want even more support or ideas on how to improve your overall health and movement quality, check out our Gold membership program. As a member of that program, you will get access to over 300 exercises that are not here on YouTube, as well as access to our monthly live Q&A where you can get your specific questions answered. I enjoyed spending time with you all today, and I will see you here on YouTube in the next video.